There is a framework that researchers, exit counselors, and cult deprogrammers use to break down exactly how organizations, from Scientology to Heaven's Gate to NXIVM, systematically dismantle the minds of their members. It's called the BITE model: behavior control, information control, thought control, emotional control. Hold that in your mind for a moment, because here's what most people never find out. That exact framework, the one developed to study the most dangerous cults in documented history, maps almost perfectly onto what a covert narcissist does inside an intimate relationship, tactic by tactic, stage by stage, with a precision that cannot be coincidental. There is also one specific difference between a covert narcissist and a cult leader. I'll get to it. But when you understand what that difference actually is, and what it means about why this is so hard to escape, so hard to explain, so hard to see while you're inside it, it's going to reframe everything. There's also something about the type of person they specifically choose, and why that choice is never accidental. I'll come back to that too. But when I walk you through how this works, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to feel a deep, unsettling recognition, the kind that settles low in your chest, or you're going to think about someone you know, someone who fits every single point. Either way, let's start where they always start. They make you feel chosen. The clinical name for it is love bombing, and when you're inside it, you don't recognize it as a tactic. You just know that this person seems to see you in a way nobody else ever has. They remember small things you mentioned in passing, the book you said you wanted to read, the offhand story about your childhood. They reach out before you do, consistently, reliably. They tell you you're different, that being around you feels different, that they've never connected with someone quite like this, and your brain, doing exactly what brains are designed to do, begins to bond. Here's what's actually happening neurologically. Being seen, valued, and chosen triggers dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemical cascade involved in addiction. Which means from the very first phase, before a single red flag has appeared, your brain has already started forming a dependency. Not on the person exactly, on the feeling they're producing in you, the feeling of being chosen, being truly understood, being finally, completely enough. Cult leaders do this at scale. They stand in front of thousands and make every single person feel personally selected, personally loved, personally called. Covert narcissists do it one-on-one, which if you think about it is actually more powerful. There's no crowd to dilute the intensity. No shared experience to give you any perspective, just you, and this one person who seems to see you completely. But the love bombing doesn't work because you were naive. It never did. It works because you didn't just feel loved. You felt safe enough to lower your guard, safe enough to share things you hadn't told other people, safe enough to invest, emotionally, psychologically, sometimes financially. And once you had invested, once you had handed over real pieces of yourself, the second phase could begin, because now something was at stake. Leaving would cost you. And they understood that, even if they never consciously calculated it. And before we get to what comes next, I need to flag something. There's a specific reason why this particular type of person targets a specific type of person. I'll come back to that. First, the second phase. Stay with me here, because this is where the relationship starts to look less like a relationship and more like something deliberately engineered. The second tactic is isolation, and the way a covert narcissist executes it is so quiet that you almost certainly blamed yourself for the result. They didn't lock you in a room. They didn't hand you a list of prohibited contacts. What they did was softer, more deniable. They expressed hurt when you made plans without them, but framed it as missing you, not controlling you. They had a subtle way of suggesting your closest friends didn't really get you, or seemed kind of draining, or that you came back from time with them seeming different. They created small, persistent friction between you and your support network. But the friction was gentle enough that smoothing it over felt like the obvious, mature choice, so you kept choosing peace with them, and quietly, without noticing it happen, you stopped choosing the people who had known you longest, not because you were told to, but because every time you reached out to them, there was a cost afterward, a mood that shifted, a silence that stretched too long, a comment small enough to dismiss, but that landed in a way you couldn't quite shake for days. By the time you noticed the distance between you and the people who used to know you best, it felt like something that had simply happened to your relationships, not something that had been carefully constructed. In cult research, this is called information control, the second element of the BITE model. Cults regulate who members can speak to, what interpretations of reality are permissible, what outside information is allowed to filter in, because an isolated person is a controllable person. A person without outside perspective can only see what they're shown. A covert narcissist does the same thing with your social world, not through rules but through emotional consequences. The effect is identical. You become dependent on them as your primary source of information about yourself, about the relationship, and about what's real, which sets up the third tactic with a precision that, once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee. I want to stop here for a second, because what I'm about to describe is something that many survivors of this kind of abuse take years, sometimes an entire decade, to fully understand, and when they finally do see it clearly, it tends to be the thing that unlocks everything else. The thing that recontextualizes experiences they'd spent years pathologizing themselves over. Thought control. In a cult, thought control is external and visible. Mandatory confession sessions, thought-stopping techniques, loaded language designed to short-circuit critical analysis, the systematic shaming of doubt. But in a covert narcissistic relationship, thought control is more intimate. It doesn't happen in group meetings. It happens inside your own mind, installed there by a process so incremental that you experienced it as you changing, not as something being done to you. Here's how it gets in. Early in the relationship, you learned, through experience, through repetition, that certain thoughts led to consequences you wanted to avoid. Doubting them led to conflict. Questioning something they said produced a version of events so different from your memory that you started wondering if your memory was the problem. Expressing that something felt wrong led to conversations that somehow always ended with you being the confused one, unfair one, the oversensitive one who was reading too much into things, so you started to preemptively edit your own thinking. Not because anyone told you to, because your nervous system, designed to protect you from pain, learned to anticipate what was coming. The thought would begin, something doesn't feel right here, and immediately another voice would cut across it. You're probably overreacting. You always do this. Don't make this into a thing. That second voice wasn't originally yours. It was installed. Psychologists who study cult behavior call this internalized thought control, the point at which members no longer need external enforcement because they've begun policing their own minds. In the context of narcissistic abuse, we call the external mechanism gaslighting. But the internal result is identical. You started to treat your own perception as the least reliable source of information available to you. You outsourced the interpretation of your own experience to the one person who had the most to gain from you doubting yourself. Now, here's the part that most people struggle to believe, even when they already understand everything I've described, because it answers a question asked constantly by survivors, by their families, by people on the outside who genuinely cannot comprehend it. Why couldn't you just leave? The fourth element of the BITE model is emotional control, and the mechanism behind it is one of the most thoroughly documented findings in the entire history of behavioral psychology. In cult settings, emotional control is maintained through intermittent reinforcement, periods of warmth, belonging, approval, and validation interrupted unpredictably by withdrawal, coldness, criticism, or punishment. The unpredictability is not incidental to the process. It is the process. Because psychologists have known since B.F. Skinner's work in the 1950s that variable reward schedules produce stronger and more persistent behavioral conditioning than any other type. You don't keep pulling the lever on a slot machine because you always win. You keep pulling it because sometimes you do, and you never know which pull it'll be. The uncertainty itself becomes the addiction. 6 decades of research consistently replicated. This is not metaphor. In a covert narcissistic relationship, you experienced this as the cycle. The closeness that felt genuinely warm and real, followed by a coldness that arrived without explanation. The connection that felt undeniable, followed by something that made you question whether any of it had been real at all. The repair after the rupture, which felt so good, so much like proof that the relationship was worth fighting for, followed by the quiet, anxious bracing for the next rupture you somehow always knew was coming. Your nervous system could not disengage from this, not because you were weak, not because you were pathologically codependent, but because the conditioning was real. The neurological response to variable reinforcement is documented, measurable, and it operates entirely below the level of conscious reasoning. You cannot think your way out of a conditioned attachment response any more than you can think your way out of flinching when something moves fast near your face. What was done to you had a mechanism. It had a name. It was not about your character now. Here's the difference I promised you. A cult leader needs followers. They need an audience, a structure, a community large enough to sustain their position, which means they have constraints. The group needs to remain functional. Compliance can't tip into total collapse. The system has to keep working. And paradoxically, that need is also their vulnerability. Thousands of members means eventually someone talks. Eventually, the pattern becomes undeniable. Eventually, the architecture is exposed, which is why David Koresh and Keith Raniere are names you know. A covert narcissist has no such requirement. And here's where the type of person they choose becomes everything. The thing I told you I'd come back to. They don't need a functioning group. They need one person, specifically, someone with high empathy, high conscientiousness, and a nervous system attuned from an early age to reading and managing other people's emotional states. Someone who will work harder to maintain the relationship than the narcissist ever has to. Someone whose internal resources, attention, validation, emotional labor, patience, can be steadily extracted with no external performance necessary. They run a cult of one. And a cult of one has no witnesses. There is no community of members who can corroborate your experience. No other people comparing notes and starting to see a pattern. When you try to describe what happened to someone who hasn't lived it, it sounds small. It sounds like ordinary relationship difficulty. Two people who were incompatible. Which is exactly why so many survivors spend years, sometimes decades, privately asking themselves whether they were the problem. Because the architecture of what was done to them was invisible to everyone except them. And a covert narcissist is protected by that invisibility in a way that Koresh and Raniere never were. They had thousands of people. Eventually someone talks. Your cult had a membership of one. The only person who witnessed what happened was you. So what do you do with this? You begin with what cult exit counselors call reconstruction of reality, which starts always with a single recognition. Your thinking was shaped by external forces operating below your conscious awareness. What you experienced was a process, a documented, studied, replicable process, not a reflection of your intelligence, your perception, or your worth. And here's what research consistently shows, directly contradicting what you were conditioned to believe. Highly empathic, emotionally perceptive people are not less vulnerable to this. They are more vulnerable. The same qualities that make you a devoted, attentive partner are precisely what make you useful to someone running this kind of system. That's not a flaw in you, it never was. Rebuilding trust in your own perception is not passive. After sustained thought control, the internal signal that says, something is wrong here has been conditioned into silence. Learning to hear it again and to trust it typically requires outside input. A therapist who understands trauma bonding and complex PTSD. A community of people whose experiences reflect yours back without minimizing them. People in your life who will tell you what they honestly observe, with no agenda attached to the telling. It is slow. It is not linear. There will be days when the conditioned voice is louder than your own. That is not failure. That is exactly what conditioned responses do for a while until they don't anymore. But here's what I want you to hold on to. The fact that you're here, watching this, trying to put language to something that felt almost impossible to explain, means that signal is still active. The part of you that knows the difference between love and a recruitment strategy. Between genuine connection and manufactured dependency. Between being truly seen and being carefully managed. A covert narcissist can suppress that signal for a long time. They can condition you to distrust it, override it, apologize for having it. But they cannot destroy it, because it is not a thought. It's not a learned belief. It's something older than either of those things, and it lives somewhere they never reached. It's still there. You just have to learn to trust it again.